My name is Peter Hale. Back in town, they used to call me Pete the Woodsman. Out here, in this house, I'm just Hay, or you. We live at the very edge of Blackwood Forest, in an old log house that leans slightly downhill, like it's tired of standing. The pines here grow so tall and thick they swallow the sun by early afternoon. By 3 o'clock, the yard already looks like evening. My wife, Alyssa, believes her mother more than she believes God, and my mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, rules this place like a queen in a wooden coffin. That evening, I stepped into the mudroom and felt it instantly. Something wrong. The house was too quiet. So quiet, I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen and the old beams popping in the cold. I pushed the door open. My 6-year-old son, Ethan, stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, on dried split peas. They were scattered in a circle beneath him like some kind of punishment ritual. His skinny legs trembled. The skin on his knees was already red and swollen. Tears hung in his eyes, not falling, just frozen there, like he was afraid even crying might make things worse. Margaret towered over him. Her black shawl had slipped down over her forehead. Her face looked carved from old bark, dry, cracked, merciless. "Stand and think," she rasped, "until the filth leaves your mouth." I dropped my tool bag on the bench. Something hot exploded in my chest. "What the hell are you doing?" My voice sounded dull and heavy, like an axe hitting frozen wood. "Get off that floor, Ethan, now!" He flinched, but didn't move. He sniffed and whispered without looking up. "Dad, I just said but. The kids at school say it all the time." Margaret turned slowly toward me. "Vulgarity is the devil's seed, Peter," she said. "I raised my daughter in discipline. I'll raise my grandson the same way. Stay out of women's matters." From the kitchen doorway, Alyssa appeared. She didn't look at our son. She didn't look at me. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, eyes distant, expression flat. That obedient, empty look she gets when her mother speaks. "Mom's right," Alyssa said. "She raised me. She knows what she's doing. Ethan has to understand every word has consequences." I stepped forward and scooped Ethan up under his arms. The peas rolled across the boards, clicking like tiny bones. He buried his face in my shoulder. His body shook. "He's not standing on that floor again," I said, staring straight at my wife. Alyssa straightened. Something in her face changed. Her voice turned cold, not louder, just colder. "If you don't like how things are done here, Peter, you can leave. This is our house. You came here with one backpack and nowhere else to go. The door's still where it was." The words hit harder than they should have. I looked toward the window. Beyond the glass, dusk was settling over Blackwood Forest. The trees pressed in close, their trunks black against the fading sky. For a second, just a second, I felt like something out there was watching the house. Something that enjoyed the sound of children trying not to cry. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling. From the kitchen came the low murmur of Margaret's voice. She was praying again, or pretending to. Her prayers always sounded like accusations, like negotiations. "Hypocrite," I muttered under my breath. I used to believe, before the logging jobs, before the isolation, before I learned that people who talk about light sometimes carry the darkest things inside them. I turned onto my side and felt something press against my chest beneath my shirt. My cross. Simple aluminum, cheap. My mother gave it to me at the bus station before I left for the army. "Wear it, Pete," she'd whispered. "You were baptized in it. It'll keep the worst things away." Over the years, the red paint at the tips had worn off. The metal had dulled. But it was warm now, warmed by my skin, my anger, my fear for my son. Margaret's voice rose behind the wall, words about cleansing, about purity, about sin living inside bloodlines. Her faith wasn't light. It was heavy, rotting, like this house. "We'll get through the winter," I whispered to myself. "I'll protect him." I tucked the cross back under my shirt. The metal felt colder than before. Morning came with frost lacing the windows. The house felt tight, suffocating. Margaret clattered dishes in the kitchen. Alyssa sat at the table, scrolling on her phone, silent. I didn't eat. I grabbed my shotgun and stepped outside. My dog, Ranger, shaggy mutt with more heart than pedigree, wagged his whole body when he saw me. I'd trained him all summer. He listened to hand signals better than most men listen to words. Snow crunched sharp beneath my boots as we headed toward the old clear-cut ridge where rabbits like to feed. The forest swallowed us quickly. Out there, things made sense. Tracks and snow didn't lie. You were hunter or hunted. Nothing in between. At home, I felt like something else, like prey. Ranger froze suddenly, ears forward, nose twitching toward a thicket of young birch. I slipped off a glove and felt the cold trigger beneath my finger. This was the moment I came out here for. No lies, no whispering behind doors, just breath, aim, and truth. A white blur exploded from beneath a fallen tree. I raised the gun. The shot shattered the quiet. Snow shook loose from pine branches. The rabbit fell. Ranger bounded forward, tail whipping the air, proud. For the first time in days, my chest felt lighter. I slung the rabbit over my shoulder and headed home, already imagining Ethan's face when he saw it. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe at the table, something would soften. Maybe. The sky had turned dark blue by the time I reached the house. The sauna out back was already heated. Steam drifted from its chimney. I set the shotgun by the mudroom wall, brought the rabbit inside, then headed to the sauna to wash off the forest smell. I stayed in there nearly an hour, let the heat cook the anger out of my bones. When I stepped back into the yard, bare-chested, jacket over my shoulders, I stopped. My shotgun lay in the snow beneath the porch light, thrown, like trash. And beside it, in a dark red smear against the white, lay the rabbit, slashed open. Not skinned, not cleaned, just gutted and discarded. Ranger whined from his chain, staring at the ruined meat. I felt something inside me harden. I kicked the door open. The house smelled of incense and frying onions. Margaret stood before her icons, crossing herself slowly. Alyssa sat at the table, sewing a sock, not looking up. "What did you do?" I asked quietly. Margaret turned. Her face looked almost peaceful. "You brought blood into this house," she said. "Death at the door, during a fast." "What fast?" She ignored the question. "I protect this home," she continued. "You dragged filth into it." Alyssa stood suddenly. "Don't yell at my mother," she snapped. "She's right. You ruin everything. You always have." I stared at her. Her face looked sharper lately, tighter, like the skin didn't quite fit right anymore. "Ethan was excited," I said. "He was waiting." "He's asleep," Margaret replied. "And his dreams will be clean tonight." Something about the way she said it made my spine tighten. "Either you live by our rules," she continued calmly, "or you live in your forest." I understood then. This wasn't about rabbits. This was about erasing me, slowly, deliberately. I picked up the shotgun from outside, wiped it dry, and locked it in the cabinet.
I didn't argue anymore. That night, I pretended to sleep, and when the clock struck midnight, I heard the floorboards creak. Ethan's bedroom door opened, soft footsteps. Margaret's voice, sweet, syrupy.
"Come, sweetheart, time to eat."
I pressed my ear to the wall. My chest tightened as I listened. "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked sleepily. Silence. Then Alyssa's voice, flat. "He's not really your dad, Ethan." The air left my lungs. "He's just someone who stayed here. Your real father died before you were born. A hero. We didn't want to upset you." My nails dug into my palms. "What?" Ethan whispered. "Forget what he's told you," Margaret murmured. "He's a stranger. He'll be gone soon." I lay in the dark, heart pounding. They weren't just pushing me out. They were rewriting me. And somewhere beyond the walls, Blackwood Forest stood silent, listening. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like distant breathing. And for the first time since moving here, I began to wonder something terrible. What if the house wasn't the only thing rotting from the inside? I didn't confront them that night. I wanted to. God, I wanted to kick that kitchen door open and drag the truth into the light. But rage without proof is just noise. And in this house, noise always got turned against me. So I lay still, listened. Margaret's voice drifted through the wall. "Eat, sweetheart. You need strength. Spring comes soon." "I want Dad," Ethan mumbled. "There is no Dad," Alyssa said flatly. "Only men who pass through." Something about the way she said it, rehearsed, precise, made my stomach turn. I waited until their footsteps faded, until the house settled again. Then I slipped out of bed and moved quietly down the hall. The kitchen was empty. A bowl sat on the table. Oatmeal. Too red. Not bright, not obvious, just faintly streaked. I touched it. Cold. Metallic. I lifted my fingers to my nose. Blood. Very little, but enough. My chest tightened. Margaret stood in the doorway behind me. I didn't hear her approach. "You shouldn't wander at night," she said softly. Her voice no longer rasped. It flowed. I turned slowly. "Whose blood?" She smiles. "You always see filth, Peter. That's your nature." Alyssa appeared behind her. For a second, just a second, I could have sworn her eyes reflected light wrong. Too yellow, too glossy. "Go to bed," she said. Not angry, not emotional, just directive, like something issuing a command. I didn't argue. I went, but I didn't sleep. The next morning, I didn't go hunting. I went to the workshop. The property in Blackwood Hollow had belonged to Alyssa's father, Mark Whitmore. He died 5 years before I came along. Heart attack, they told me. Closed casket. I never questioned it. The workshop sat apart from the house, built of old-growth larch, darkened nearly black with age. It smelled of sawdust, oil, and something older underneath. The yard was cluttered with relics. 2 massive barns leaned like tired giants. Inside one rotted the skeleton of an iron-wheeled wagon. In the other were Mark's carvings, masks, twisted and exaggerated, faces stretched into expressions that didn't belong to humans. Why carve so many faces? Why hide them in a barn? But the thing that bothered me most was the cellar mound. From outside it looked ordinary, just a low earthen hump with a wooden door. Inside, different story. Years ago, grabbing potatoes, I'd shone a flashlight deeper than I needed to. Beyond the shelves were tunnels, not just storage alcoves. Tunnels, cut into clay and reinforced with timber, leading down, farther than a root cellar should. At the back was an iron door, thick,
bolted, with a screw lock mechanism like something from a submarine. I'd asked Alyssa once for the key. She'd gone pale. "Don't go down there," she'd whispered. "Dad said that place holds old grief." Old grief. Today I looked at that mound differently.
If they were rewriting my son's memory, if they were planning to push me out, then whatever was beneath that door was my only leverage. I grabbed a pry bar, a sledgehammer. If the door wouldn't open politely, it would open another way. I stepped toward the cellar stairs. Behind me, I turned. Margaret stood near the barn corner, wrapped in her heavy coat. Her face held no anger now, only certainty. "Don't," she said quietly. "What's down there?" "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." She didn't blink. "Mark made agreements," she said. "Agreements that kept this place safe." "From what?" Her eyes shifted briefly toward the tree line. "From what waits." I felt something tighten inside my ribs. "What agreements?" She ignored the question. "Come inside," she said. "Alyssa's waiting. We should finish this." "Finish what?" I followed her. The house was overheated, suffocating. Alyssa sat at the table with a blank sheet of paper in front of her. Divorce papers. "I'm filing," she said evenly. "This isn't working." "Because I hunt?" I asked. "Because you don't belong." Ethan was nowhere in sight. "He stays with me," she continued. "You're seasonal work. You disappear for months. The court will side with the mother." Margaret stood near the stove. "You have 2 days," she said. "Take your tools, your guns. Leave quietly." The calmness in her voice terrified me more than shouting ever had. "You're poisoning him against me," I said. "He'll forget you," Alyssa replied. "Just like that." "He's 6!" "Children forget what doesn't feed them." I looked toward Ethan's bedroom door. I could leave, start over. But the thought of him growing up alone with whatever lived behind Margaret's eyes... No. 2 days, I said. But inside, a different clock had started ticking. That night, I waited until the house went completely still. No footsteps, no whispered prayers, no movement through the walls. I strapped on my headlamp and slipped down into the cellar. The air felt wrong immediately, heavier than usual. The familiar smell of damp earth was mixed with something faintly metallic and sharp, like old tools left out in the rain. I reached the iron door at the back. The screw lock resisted at first. Then it turned, too easily, like someone had opened it not long ago. The door groaned as I pulled it wide. My light cut through the darkness and revealed a chamber. Not storage, not a root cellar, a shrine. The walls were covered in painted figures, antlered silhouettes, human shapes tangled with tree roots, ochre and charcoal smeared in deliberate strokes. Primitive, intentional. I swept the beam to the right and froze. In carved stone niches rested bones, arranged carefully, not scattered, placed. A skull I recognized, Mark Whitmore. I'd seen his photo too many times to mistake it. The shape of the jaw, the faint fracture line above the brow. He hadn't died the way they told me. My stomach twisted. I stepped back, and the light shifted farther right. Behind a hanging burlap curtain lay 2 figures, Alyssa, Margaret, side by side, still, unmoving. Their skin pale, marked with unfamiliar symbols etched across their faces. They had been gone for some time, at least weeks. My mind refused to process it. If they were here, then who was upstairs? A sound above me, a door slamming, Ranger barking wildly, then abruptly stopping.
The silence that followed was worse. Footsteps, heavy, directly above. Then Ethan's voice, soft, confused. "Dad? Grandma said you got me a surprise." The voice that answered him wasn't Margaret's. It sounded like her, but layered, thicker, almost echoing beneath itself. "Come downstairs, Peter," it called gently. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." I shut off my light. The darkness swallowed me whole.
And above my head, something moved across my house wearing my wife's face. I didn't think. I moved. Up the cellar steps 2 at a time, heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The iron door slammed behind me as I burst through the wooden hatch and into the workshop. The air outside felt razor cold in my lungs. The yard lights were on. The house glowed warm and normal. Kitchen lights spilling across the snow, thin smoke rising from the chimney. Normal. That was the worst part. I sprinted across the yard. Ranger lay beside his kennel. Not torn apart, not mangled, just folded into himself like he'd fallen asleep mid-step. The snow beneath him was dark. Too dark. I didn't stop. I threw the front door open. The house smelled sweet, overripe, like meat left too long in a freezer. Ethan stood in the living room near the coffee table, holding one of his wooden blocks. He looked fine. Perfect. Too perfect. And behind him, near the hallway, stood Alyssa. She smiled at me, slowly. "Find what you were looking for?" she asked. Her voice sounded correct, but slightly off, like an echo didn't sync properly. I kept my distance. "Where are they?" I asked. She tilted her head. "We're right here." "No," I said. "The real ones." Her smile didn't fade. Margaret stepped out of the kitchen. She moved wrong, not obvious, subtle, like her knees bent a fraction too far backward before straightening. "You always dig where you shouldn't," she said. "Mark warned you." My eyes flicked to Ethan. "Come here, buddy." He didn't move. He looked at me, and for just a second, something ancient flickered behind his eyes. Then it was gone. "Dad?" he asked. "What's wrong?" Alyssa's hand rested gently on his shoulder, possessive. "Peter," she said, "you went somewhere you weren't invited." I saw the cellar. Margaret's expression hardened slightly. "And? You've been dead for weeks." Silence. Then, a sound. Not laughter, not quite. Something like dry leaves grinding together. Margaret's lips parted. Her jaw opened wider than it should have. "Bodies are vessels," she said. The words didn't come from her mouth alone. They came from deeper, layered, hollow. Alyssa's smile widened. "Mark made a promise," she added. "He wanted permanence." My pulse thudded in my ears. "What promise?" Ethan answered, but it wasn't Ethan's voice. "Continuity." It came out low, cracked, old. My stomach dropped. Mark Whitmore. "You..." I stepped back. "You're in him." "Temporarily," Ethan said calmly. "The boy is resilient." Ranger's still body flashed through my mind. The cellar, the symbols. "You killed them." Margaret's head snapped toward me too fast. "No," she said. "They volunteered." Her skin along the jawline shifted slightly, like something moved beneath it. "You're lying." Alyssa's voice turned sharp. "Don't raise your voice." I felt the air change, thicker, pressurized. "Mark sought something older than scripture," Ethan continued, voice slipping between child and elder.
Something rooted in Blackwood Forest before churches were built. My hand instinctively moved to the cross under my shirt. The metal felt hot. "You let something in," I whispered. Margaret smiled. "We invited." A creak from the hallway. The lights flickered. Ethan stepped forward, too steady, too measured. "Father," he said. The word wasn't affectionate. It was observational. "You are inconvenient." The hallway darkened behind them, and from that darkness, something unfolded. It wasn't a full shape, not fully visible, but it bent the light around it. Antler-like shadows stretching across the ceiling, long limbs brushing the doorway frame. It didn't step into the room. It didn't need to. It filled it. My breath shortened. "You're feeding it," I said. Margaret's eyes gleamed. "It feeds us." Alyssa's skin split slightly along her wrist.
Just a thin line, gray beneath. Not muscle, something fibrous. Wrong. "You were going to leave," Ethan said. "You were already half gone." "I'm not leaving him," I snapped. Ethan's head twitched. A smile too wide pulled at his small mouth. "You misunderstand," he said softly. "I am him." Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward. Margaret moved first. She dropped to all fours mid-step, spine arching grotesquely, vertebrae pressing against skin until it tore. Her arms elongated, fingers splitting, sharpening. Alyssa followed. Her shoulders jerked backward unnaturally, her jaw unhinged with a wet crack, skin stretching, tight, translucent. They weren't wearing flesh. They were inside it, guarding it. Mark watched from Ethan's body calmly. "Caretakers," he explained. My hand tore the cross free from my shirt. I didn't think, I just moved. Alyssa's altered form leapt first, faster than anything human should move. I swung the cross forward instinctively. It touched her forehead. A hiss filled the room, not loud, but sharp. Steam rose. Her skin blackened where the metal pressed. She screamed, a sound like wind ripping through dead branches. Margaret lunged from the side. I shoved a dining chair into her path. It splintered instantly beneath her weight. She crawled toward me, limbs bending backward like a spider. "Stop," Ethan said calmly, and both creatures froze, obedient. He stepped off the rug and onto the hardwood. The floor creaked. The antlered shadow behind him stretched farther across the ceiling. "You think symbols bind us?" he asked. "I watched you in the cellar." His eyes flickered gold. Mark believed in protection. He misunderstood hierarchy. He raised one small hand. The room temperature dropped sharply. My breath fogged. "You are flesh," he said quietly. "And flesh is temporary." Behind him, the dark shape leaned closer, pressing against the boundaries of the house. And I understood something terrible. The cellar wasn't a prison. It was an anchor. And whatever had answered Mark's invitation wasn't confined to bodies. It was confined to place. Blackwood Forest wasn't outside the house. It was underneath it. Ethan blinked slowly. "Leave," he said. "You still can." "And him?" I demanded. He smiled. "You are sentimental." Margaret's warped body twitched impatiently. Alyssa's fingers scraped the hardwood, waiting. I tightened my grip on the cross. "You made a mistake," I said. Ethan tilted his head. "Oh?" "You let me see." The lights exploded, glass shattered outward. The house plunged into darkness. And something inside the walls shifted.
The windows didn't just shatter, they imploded. Glass burst inward like the night itself had punched through. The living room filled with splinters and snow dust wind, and for a moment all I could hear was a deep, resonant hum, like something massive dragging itself beneath the foundation. Ethan didn't flinch. Margaret and Alyssa, the things wearing them, crouched low, limbs folded wrong, waiting for command. The antlered shadow behind my son thickened. It wasn't stepping forward, it was pressing through. The walls bowed slightly inward, as if the house were breathing. "You're breaking the vessel," I shouted over the wind. Ethan's golden eyes flicked toward the ceiling. "No," he said softly. "You are." The cross in my fist burned now, not warm, hot, painfully. The creature shifted again, muscles tightening under stretched skin. "Mark thought he was bargaining," I said, backing slowly toward the hallway. "He thought he could contain you." "Containment is a human word," Ethan replied calmly. "He offered continuity. We accepted." The dark mass along the doorway elongated, brushing the ceiling with branch-like protrusions. Wherever it touched, frost spidered across the wood.
"You're tied to this land," I said. "To the cellar." Ethan's smile thinned. "You've been below," he said. "Then you know." Behind him, the shape pulsed once, like a heartbeat too slow for something alive. The cellar. The iron door. The painted symbols. The bones. An anchor. If Mark had bound it to the land, then the land was its cage. I lunged sideways toward the hallway. Margaret sprang. Her body slammed into the wall where I'd stood half a second earlier, plaster cracking under impact. Alyssa vaulted the coffee table, landing on all fours with a crack of bone. "Do not let him reach it," Ethan said quietly. So I was right. I sprinted down the hall toward the mudroom. Behind me came the scraping thunder of limbs and claws against hardwood. The air felt thicker with each step, like wading through cold water. I grabbed the shotgun cabinet key from the hook near the door, hands shaking, unlocked it, pulled the gun free. Margaret's twisted form burst around the corner. I fired. The blast tore through her chest, shredding fabric and flesh. She hit the floor hard, but she didn't die. She twitched. The wound didn't bleed red, it leaked something dark and fibrous. Alyssa slammed into me from the side, knocking the gun loose. We crashed into the coat rack. Her face was inches from mine, skin splitting further, eyes empty. "Leave," she hissed. The voice came from deeper inside her throat. Not hers. Not human. I jammed the cross against her neck. The sizzle filled the air. She shrieked and recoiled violently. I grabbed the shotgun and bolted out the back door. Snow swallowed my boots. The workshop loomed ahead like a black tooth against the night. Behind me, the house groaned. Not wood settling. Something else. The antlered shape pressed against the windows, its outline visible from outside now. Impossibly tall, folded into a space too small. Ethan's voice carried through the wind. "You can't unmake what was promised." I didn't look back. I tore open the cellar hatch inside the workshop and descended. The air below felt denser than before, charged. The iron door stood open from earlier. The shrine chamber flickered in my headlamp beam. The bones, the painted figures. Mark's skull stared from its niche. "You wanted permanence," I muttered. "You got it." I moved deeper into the chamber, past the niches, to the rear wall, where the paint was thickest, where the symbols overlapped into a central sigil carved directly into the stone. A circle, split by branching lines like roots. At its center, a cavity, empty. Something had been placed there once, removed.
Above me, the earth trembled. A crack snaked down the ceiling clay, raining dust. It was coming. The anchor was here. The ritual focus. The binding point. Mark hadn't just invited something in. He'd given it structure. A host in flesh. A tether in stone. And I'd just disrupted the flesh. Now it would come for the stone. Footsteps thudded on the workshop floor above. Heavy, then lighter. Ethan. And the others. I scanned the chamber desperately. Tools, shelves, old crates. Then I saw it. A carved wooden idol on a side altar. Small, antlered, painted in dried, dark stains. The same branching symbol carved into its chest. The missing piece. I grabbed it. The moment my hand closed around the wood, the temperature dropped violently. The lantern flickered. The earth groaned. "You should not touch that," Ethan's voice echoed from the stairwell. He stood at the top of the cellar steps, not running, not frantic, calm. Margaret and Alyssa flanked him, wounds sealing, limbs reshaping. "You don't belong to this ground," he said softly. But he did. Mark. He believed he could live forever, I said. Ethan smiled faintly. He does. The creatures began descending, slow, deliberate. I backed toward the center sigil. "You're bound here," I said. "Only as long as it stands." Ethan's head tilted. "Correct." I raised the idol.
And what happens if it doesn't? For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not fear, concern. The shadow behind him thickened, pushing down the stairwell like liquid night. "You misunderstand scale," he said. "I don't need scale," I replied. "I need leverage." Margaret lunged again, but I hurled the idol into the carved cavity at the center of the sigil. The wood fit perfectly, the lines aligned, and the chamber screamed. Not sound, pressure. The walls flexed inward. The painted symbols ignited in dull red glow. Ethan staggered mid-step. The antlered mass recoiled violently up the stairs. "You idiot!" the layered voice roared. The creatures convulsed, limbs jerking as if yanked by invisible hooks. I grabbed the sledgehammer from beside the wall, raised it high, and brought it down onto the idol. The wood cracked. The red glow flared blinding white. The entire cellar shook. Above me, the workshop beams splintered. The house groaned like a dying animal. Ethan screamed, but the voice wasn't singular anymore. It fractured, split, layers tearing apart. I swung again. The idol shattered fully. The carved sigil split down the middle. A shockwave blasted outward through the chamber, knocking me flat. The creatures shrieked upstairs. The antlered shadow collapsed inward like smoke sucked through a vacuum. Then, silence. Total, absolute. Dust drifted slowly through the beam of my dying headlamp. The stairwell stood empty. No Ethan, no Margaret, no Alyssa. Just the distant sound of wood cracking as the house settled above. I lay there, ears ringing, heart pounding. The anchor was broken, but I didn't know what else had broken with it, and whether what Mark had invited was gone, or simply unbound. For a long time, I couldn't hear anything except the ringing in my ears. The cellar felt hollow now, dead. The red glow was gone. The carved sigils split in two like a cracked rib. The shattered remains of the idol lay scattered across the dirt floor. I pushed myself up slowly. "Ethan?" My voice came out hoarse. No answer. I climbed the cellar steps, shotgun in one hand, sledgehammer in the other.
The workshop above was intact, barely. Dust hung thick in the air, drifting down from ceiling beams. Tools lay scattered across the floor where the shockwave had rattled them loose. The hatch to the yard stood open. Snow blew inside in thin ribbons. I stepped out. The house windows were dark. No warm light, no movement. The front door hung crooked on one hinge. The yard felt wrong. Not tense, empty. I crossed the snow carefully and entered the house. The living room was wrecked, furniture overturned, plaster cracked. But the smell was different now. No sweetness, no rot, just cold wood and dust. "Ethan?" My heart pounded harder with each step down the hallway. His bedroom door stood open. The bed was unmade, blankets on the floor. No blood, no struggle, just absence. I checked the kitchen. The oatmeal bowl was gone. The incense sticks were ash. The icons had fallen from the wall. Margaret's shawl lay crumpled near the stove. But there were no bodies. Not upstairs, not downstairs. I ran back to the workshop and descended again into the shrine chamber. The niches where Mark's bones had rested were empty. The curtain where Alyssa and Margaret's corpses had lain, gone. The chamber was stripped clean, like it had never held anything, like I had imagined it. I stood there, shaking. If the anchor had shattered, had I freed them or erased them? A soft crunch came from above, snow under boots. I rushed up again. In the yard, near Ranger's body, small footprints led toward the tree line. Barefoot, Ethan's size. They stopped at the edge of Blackwood Forest, and then vanished. No drag marks, no return tracks, just a blank wall of trees. The forest was silent, not windless, not frozen. Silent, as if holding breath. "Ethan!" I shouted into the dark. Nothing answered. No echo, no rustle. The trees swallowed sound.
I felt it then, not presence, absence, like something enormous had withdrawn and left the air thinner. I stepped toward the trees, and something in me screamed not to. Not fear, instinct. This wasn't a hunt. It wasn't tracking a wounded animal. It was stepping into a place that no longer operated by rules I understood. I backed away, slowly. I couldn't save him by running blindly into that. I needed help, real help, not police, not clergy. Someone who knew what Mark had been doing. Someone older than this house. I thought of one man, Harold Bishop. They called him Old Hal. Lived near the river on the far edge of Blackwood Hollow. Never married, never left. People said he knew the woods better than anyone alive. I'd laughed at that once. I wasn't laughing now. Hal opened his door before I knocked. He looked at me like he'd expected this. "You broke it," he said quietly. I swallowed. "The anchor." He nodded once. "And the boy? Gone." Hal stepped aside and let me in. His cabin smelled of smoke and cedar. He poured 2 cups of black coffee without asking. "You think you killed it," he said. I shattered the binding. Hal stared into the steam rising from his cup. "Bindings don't kill," he said. "They contain." Cold crawled up my spine. "You're saying I let it loose?" He looked at me then, not accusing, just tired. "I'm saying Mark Whitmore built a cage," Hal said. "A foolish one, but a cage nonetheless. And now? Now it doesn't need flesh inside your house." My stomach dropped. It took him. Hal shook his head slowly.
No. What do you mean, no? It didn't take him. He leaned forward slightly. He walked. The words hit harder than anything else that night. He's 6. Hal's eyes were steady, and he's been spoken to for years. I remembered the midnight whispers, the oatmeal streaked red, the way Ethan's eyes had flickered long before I broke the idol. You think it was grooming him? Hal didn't answer directly.
It doesn't need possession if it can convince. The cabin creaked softly in the wind.
What do I do? I asked. Hal took a slow sip of coffee.
You find him before it teaches him to stop missing you.
The words sank like stones. Where? I demanded. Hal stood and crossed to a wall where an old map of the forest hung. He tapped a spot near the northern ridge. Blackwood used to have a clearing there, he said. Before logging, before roads. That's where Mark found the stone. The stone? The first anchor. My pulse quickened. You're telling me there's another? Hal met my gaze. There's always another. Outside his cabin, the forest shifted slightly. Not loud, not obvious, but aware. Hal grabbed his coat and an old rifle from the rack. You don't hunt this like a deer, he said. You don't shoot at shadows. Then what? You talk first. Talk, I snapped. Hal's eyes hardened. You want your son back? Then you better understand something. What? He opened the door. Cold air rushed in. It doesn't think it's evil. The forest waited beyond the porch steps, and somewhere inside it, my son was walking deeper, learning. We left before sunrise. Blackwood Forest doesn't feel like a forest in the dark. It feels like something that closes behind you. Hal walked ahead, steady, deliberate, no wasted motion. His boots barely disturbed the snow. I followed, shotgun strapped across my back, cross cold against my chest. The deeper we moved, the quieter it became. No birds, no wind through branches, just the dull thud of our steps. You ever see it? I asked quietly. Hal didn't turn. See what? The thing. He considered that. I've seen what it leaves behind. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. We reached the northern ridge around noon. The trees thinned slightly. Ahead lay a shallow bowl in the earth, a clearing, not natural. The snow inside it had melted in a perfect circle, though the temperature hadn't risen. At the center stood a stone, tall, dark.
Veined with something that wasn't mineral. It pulsed faintly. Not glowing, just breathing. And Ethan stood in front of it, barefoot, hands at his sides. He wasn't shivering. He wasn't crying. He looked calm, almost peaceful. Ethan, I called. He turned slowly. His face was his own again. No gold in the eyes, no layered voice. Just my son. You came, he said. Relief crashed through me so hard my knees nearly buckled. Of course I came, I said. Hal's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Don't step into the circle, he murmured. I looked down. The snow line formed a perfect boundary around the clearing, like a threshold. Dad, Ethan said softly. It's okay. I studied him carefully. You hurt? I asked. He shook his head. No. His voice sounded normal, but there was something underneath it. Not possession, not quite. Understanding. You shouldn't have broken it, he said gently. The idol? He nodded. It was keeping things smaller. Hal exhaled slowly beside me. Told you, he muttered. I swallowed hard.
Ethan, come here. He glanced back at the stone, then at me. It says you're afraid. My heart pounded. What does it say about you? He hesitated. That I don't have to be. The air inside the circle shimmered faintly. The trees leaned inward ever so slightly, branches angling toward the clearing. It doesn't feel like before, Ethan continued. It's not loud anymore. What is it? I asked. He searched for words. It's old, he said finally. It doesn't like being trapped. The stone pulsed once. The ground trembled subtly beneath our boots. Hal shifted his rifle but didn't raise it. You talked to it? Hal asked calmly. Ethan nodded. It talks back. And what does it want? Hal pressed. Ethan looked at me. It says you misunderstand it. I almost laughed. That's convenient. It says Grandpa asked wrong. That made my blood run cold. Asked what? For life without ending, Ethan said. It gave him continuity instead. The word again. Continuity.
Hal's grip on my arm tightened. It doesn't kill, Ethan said quietly. It repurposes. I felt something twist in my stomach. Repurposes how? Ethan's gaze drifted toward the forest. It grows through us. The wind stirred suddenly, not from outside the clearing, from within it. The air thickened. The circle boundary flickered faintly, as if heat rose from beneath the soil. You shouldn't have broken the anchor, Ethan repeated softly. Why? I demanded. Because now it's not tied here anymore. The words hung between us. Then why are you here? I asked. Ethan looked at the stone. Because it still likes this place. The trees creaked, not from wind, from tension. Hal finally spoke. You can't let him stay in there. I knew that. Every instinct screamed it. Ethan, I said carefully, step out of the circle. He looked down at his feet, then back at me. It says if I leave, it will choose someone else. The forest fell utterly still. My breath shortened. What do you mean, choose? He swallowed. It says I'm compatible. The word hit like a gunshot. Compatible with what? I snapped. Ethan's eyes flickered, not gold, not fully, just a faint reflection of the stone's pulse. With remembering. Hal stepped slightly forward, still outside the boundary. Kid, he said firmly, that thing doesn't remember. It consumes. Ethan's head tilted. It doesn't think so. The stone pulsed again, stronger. The ground inside the circle cracked faintly like frost fracturing. And for the first time, I felt something brushing against my mind, not words, not sound, just awareness. Cold, ancient, curious. It wasn't angry, it wasn't malicious, it was interested. In me, in Hal, in movement, in growth. I understood then what Hal meant. It didn't see itself as evil. It saw itself as expansion. Ethan, I said slowly, you don't owe it anything. He frowned slightly. It says I do. Why? Because you broke its cage. My throat tightened. Hal spoke again. Peter. I didn't look at him. If it's not bound here anymore, Hal continued carefully, then it's choosing a conduit. A conduit. Not possession, partnership, teaching. Dad, Ethan whispered, and now I heard fear creeping in. It says it doesn't need to hide anymore. The forest groaned softly, branches bending inward, snow sliding from limbs. It says cities are easier.
My blood froze. Cities. More people. More vessels. More continuity. "Step out of the circle!" I shouted. Ethan flinched. The stone flared suddenly. Not bright, but dense, like gravity bending light. The ground split under Ethan's feet. Hal fired into the stone. The bullet struck and ricocheted uselessly into the trees. The awareness brushed harder against my mind. Not pain. Invitation. You understand. The sensation was not spoken, but it was clear. You see the pattern. You break what binds. You are capable. My grip tightened on the cross. "No," I muttered. The sensation pressed deeper, not forceful, just patient. You protect. So do I. I saw it then. Not a shape, not antlers, not a monster. Roots, threads, veins of dark energy spreading under soil and stone, connecting forest to river, clearing to town, home to city. It wasn't one being, it was a network, and Mark had tapped into it, wrongly. Ethan's knees buckled. He cried out, "Dad!" The circle flared violently. Hal grabbed me. "Now!" he shouted. I stepped forward, across the boundary. The cold hit instantly. Not temperature, weight. My mind filled with images not mine. Trees growing through houses, people walking with hollow eyes, children whispering to stone. Continuity, expansion. No death, just integration. Ethan reached for me. I grabbed him. The moment our hands touched, the awareness surged. Not angry, but curious. If you break anchors, then anchor something else. The stone cracked, a fissure splitting its center. Hal shouted something, but I couldn't hear. All I could feel was the network pressing, testing, measuring. You understand structure.
You understand protection. My cross burned white hot against my skin, and for the first time, I realized something horrifying. It wasn't trying to take Ethan. It was evaluating me. The moment I stepped fully inside the circle, the forest disappeared. Not physically, but perceptually. The trees, the snow, Hal shouting behind me, all of it dropped away like a backdrop in a theater. What remained was structure, lines, veins of dark, branching energy beneath everything, through the soil, through the stone, through me, through Ethan. It wasn't a creature standing in front of us. It was a system, ancient, patient, self-correcting. You break cages, it pulsed. You resist decay. You fear loss. I clutched Ethan to my chest. I fear losing my son. The awareness tightened. Loss is inefficient. Death is fragmentation. Integration preserves. Images flooded me. Forests consuming abandoned towns, roots splitting highways, fungal networks threading beneath cities, people walking unaware as something subtle intertwined with their thoughts. Not controlling, influencing, adjusting. Continuity. You wear faces, I whispered. We use what grows. The memory of Margaret's twisted form flashed in my mind. Alyssa's unhinged jaw, Mark speaking through Ethan. You call that evil. It was not defensive, not angry, just stating a difference. You hollow people out, I said. We extend them. Ethan trembled in my arms. Dad, it's loud. The network pulsed harder. Because you broke the anchor. The stone beneath our feet cracked further. Hal's voice broke faintly through the distortion. Peter, pull him out! I looked down at Ethan.
His eyes weren't gold. They were terrified. The awareness shifted toward me again. You are more suitable. The pressure increased, not forcing, offering. You understand protection. You resist death. You broke the old binding correctly. A realization struck me like ice water. Mark hadn't failed the ritual. He'd misunderstood the terms. He wanted immortality.
The network offered continuity through integration. He thought he'd control it. Instead, it used him. You don't need Ethan, I said through clenched teeth. Correct? My stomach dropped. You need someone who understands boundaries. Yes. The word vibrated through my skull. Someone who can build better anchors. Cold clarity settled over me. It wasn't here to devour. It was here to expand. And it needed architects. You want a steward, I said. The pulse steadied. Yes. Hal's voice broke in again. Peter, get out of there! I ignored him. You won't spread into cities if you're anchored properly. The awareness flickered. Define properly. I swallowed. Bound to the forest, to this clearing. No extension beyond natural growth. You would bind me again. Yes. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything before. Why would you limit continuity? I looked down at Ethan. Because love requires choice. The network hesitated. A subtle shift. Choice creates inefficiency. Choice creates meaning. The word lingered. Meaning. The pulse weakened slightly. You would anchor willingly? Yes. Ethan gasped. Dad, no! I knelt in the snow, holding him tightly. It can't take you if it has me, I whispered. The awareness pressed closer. Clarify terms. You stay in the forest. No human integration without consent. No possession. No repurposing. A long pause. Consent is unstable. Then you stay contained. The ground trembled. Hal fired another useless shot into the stone. I'll anchor you, I continued, but not as a cage, as a boundary. The network studied me. You will weaken. I'll age. You will die. Yes. Then anchor fails. I'll build successors. The pulse sharpened. Define successors. People who choose. Guardians, not hosts. The network flowed through me briefly, testing intention. You would create a lineage of wardens. Yes. Bound by will. Yes. Not by blood. Yes. The stone beneath us split fully in two. Light, not bright, but dense, spilled upward. The network surged once more. Agreement conditional. Terms accepted. Ethan screamed as the pressure shifted away from him. It hit me instead. Not possession. Alignment. The veins of dark energy rewove around my mind like cold roots. Not inside. Around. Anchored. Hal rushed forward and dragged Ethan across the boundary line. The moment the boy crossed it, the crushing pressure on his body vanished. The awareness remained focused on me. Anchor begins. The stone fragments lifted slightly from the ground, rearranging into a new configuration, branching lines forming a living sigil in the earth. I felt something settle, not inside my chest, beneath my thoughts. A presence like deep soil beneath bare feet. You will guard. Yes. You will not seek expansion beyond agreed boundary. Yes. You will teach successors. Yes. The pulse softened, then narrowed,
The vast network receded from my immediate perception, drawing back into the forest, into roots, into the clearing. The pressure lifted. The world snapped back into shape. Trees, snow, Hal kneeling beside Ethan. The cracked stone now reformed into a low, twisted pillar at the center of the clearing. No longer pulsing wildly, just steady, contained. I staggered, but did not fall. Hal stared at me. "What did you do?" he breathed. I looked at my hands. They trembled slightly. I negotiated. Ethan ran to me and threw his arms around my waist. His heartbeat was fast, human, normal. "Is it gone?" he asked. I looked at the forest. It wasn't gone. It was listening. "It's staying," I said quietly. Hal's jaw tightened. "And you?" I touched the cross at my chest. It no longer burned. "I'm staying too." Epilogue. We rebuilt nothing in Blackwood Hollow. The house collapsed by spring. The workshop sank slowly into the earth. The cellar flooded and sealed itself. The clearing remains. People don't wander there, not because of signs, because something in them knows not to. Ethan grew. He remembers some of it, not all.
That was part of the agreement. Hal visits sometimes. He never steps into the circle. I do, every week. I stand at the stone and feel the network breathe beneath the soil. It no longer presses. It waits. Sometimes I feel threads reach outward toward highways far beyond the forest. Curious, tempted. When that happens, I press back, reminded of boundaries, reminded of terms. It listens. For now. Ethan is 12 now. He asks questions about the forest, about stewardship, about continuity. I answer carefully. He will have a choice. That was the condition. Some nights, when the wind moves through the trees just right, I feel the awareness shift slightly. Not hostile, not hungry, just patient. I understand it now. It was never a monster in the dark. It was a force without limits. And limits are something only humans can give meaning to. The forest still stands. So do I. But I know this much. Anchors don't last forever. And one day, someone will stand in that clearing again and decide whether continuity is worth the cost.